So let's get started. Our first question is, in Web Intelligence 4.2 Service Pack 7, when I duplicate a report, I right-click on a tab, duplicate report, the original and the duplicate reports both use the same set of filters. Changing the filters for the duplicate report will make the same changes to the filters used by the original report. This is not what I want. How can the duplicate report use its own set of filters so that any changes to the duplicate reports filters will not affect the original reports filters and vice versa? So Renali, I'm giving that one to you. What do you think?
Okay, sure. So from the nature of the issue and the behavior, it sounds like it is an input control and that a document input control. So when you're duplicating the report, it's also duplicating the input controls along with it. And because it is at the document level, whenever you make any changes to that, it is applying across the entire document. To apply specific filters to the specific reports, you need to apply report level input control. So whenever you're defining an input control, there is a step where you choose whether it's the entire document or just the current report. So you need to choose current report so that that filter is applicable only to that report tab. Yeah, let me know if that was the issue. Then I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. No, that's awesome. Yeah, the person who asked the question can chime in on the chat session as well. What's your input regarding moving business objects to the cloud, cost-wise and performance-wise? Okay, I'll take this one quickly because I've addressed this in previous discussions before, but you know, to move business objects itself from on-premise to the cloud is pretty straightforward from the standpoint that it's the same software and you're just putting it right in a different location. But obviously with the cloud comes security considerations, configuration setup considerations, and so forth. And so there is a little bit of work to be done in that area. Most customers who have moved to the cloud have used their own private cloud. And therefore they have control over that environment. SAP offers BusinessObjects Private Cloud Edition, where they host your business objects for you in the cloud, but not too many people have taken that path right yet because it's quite expensive, and we're waiting to hear about a mid-market offering for that. Performance-wise, it's no different to any other cloud-based application. So, you know, as long as you've got, you know, good bandwidth between your locations and your cloud location where BusinessObjects is, it will work well. You should really only move BusinessObjects to the cloud when the majority of the data sources it is accessing move to the cloud as well. Okay, next question was, review general upgrade planning considerations. During the upgrade from 4.2 Service Pack 8 to 4.3 Service Pack 2, do we do as we've done with previous updates? Is during the actual outage, we pause our production live schedules with VBA macro in Excel and unpause at the go live. Is this a common practice when there are so many, you know, when somebody has a lot of schedules like us? Are there alternatives besides pausing directly in the instance manager? Amy? Are you on mute, Amy? Yeah, Amy, you're muted.
You can use like you experienced with a macro. Similarly, what I've used is there's a JDK macro that you could use, a Java macro that's available that SAP provides. It's an old knowledge base 136.3241. Pause recurring instances, and it also has in it a switch for restarting those paused instances. So if you're looking to do it in bulk, there is a solution, a script solution out there that SAP provides. That one is an old one. It just takes newer jars. So you just need to kind of update it. So similarly, when you're dealing with bulk, you would do it that way. I use the instance manager because you can just grab in bulk. But you definitely want to keep in mind that you may have existing schedules that are paused for a reason. Often people will, instead of deleting schedules, they will just pause them, and then they'll have a whole slew of paused ones that they don't want to restart when they do the migration. So you definitely want to keep in mind that you're going to have some that you're going to restart and some that you aren't.
Excellent. And then staying on that theme of going to 4.3 Service Pack 2, the only customization that I would need immediately at the time of the update is to replace the SAP logo with my company logo. Does this require the use of the theme designer, which is new, which requires to redeploy the BusinessObjects WAR file, because this would require to retest that SAML and other configurations are in place? Can this be avoided simply to add the company logo, Renali?
For 4.3 or with any Fiori Launchpad or Fiori interface, you should use theme designer because Fiori is little bit, it acts different than traditional UI. And theme designer is like for any kind of branding. Theme design, it's very simple to change the logo from theme designer and then deploy. Traditionally, even if you place the files in WAR files and folder locations, one would need to deploy them anyway, deploy the WAR files anyway. So the only different step is theme designer. And there are very detailed steps, guidelines are there out there on how to do that. But yeah, theme designer is what you should do.
Okay. Then we have a whole slew of questions about, what was in the product availability matrix for BI 4.3 and considerations, that people are now plowing through and trying to figure out what am I supposed to do. So Roxanne, a question for you, considerations from a user perspective. What are the big things that people are going to have to watch out for going to 4.3 from a user perspective? I think you're muted, Roxanne.
We're all being polite and staying muted in between.
From a user perspective, moving to 4.3, the biggest thing is to get some training. We offer a one-day differences course that would help users get accustomed to the differences, and this is how you did it in 4.2, and this is how you would do it in 4.3, to show them what are the big challenges that they're going to face with that. So the UI in 4.3 is very different, but I love it. I love it. And the more I use it, the more I regret having to go back and work in 4.2. So initially, I think your users will have to, go through that initial adjustment, like when you get a new phone or something like that. And it feels a little uncomfortable because things are in different places. But once you get accustomed to where the new things are, I believe everyone's going to really love the new UI.
Awesome. Over to you, Amy. What about considerations for browser updates? The PAM seems to suggest that Chrome and Edge are the only ones supported in 4.3.
Yeah, so Firefox as of SP2 is out as far as support goes. IE is, of course, Microsoft is lessening the support for that. So IE is also kind of going off the table. There's some translation issues that you'd have with that anyway. So if you have any translation needs. But So Chrome and Edge, yes. And of course, browsers are going to have more secure as time goes on. They're going to add additional security settings. Certainly we've discovered, or we've experienced issues with the SSL certificate needing to have the sans, the aliases defined. Even if you're not using aliases, you still need to have something there. So, so there's certain things that will come up. SSO is a big difference. So if you're doing single sign-on, then you need to have your service account has to be constrained delegation, which means it has to have specific servers that it can go to, as opposed to, just general delegation. So there's, again, that tightening of security in general, expect across all browsers.
Okay, and staying with that as well, what about considerations for, multi-factor authentication and SAML?
Yeah, so interestingly, just yesterday, I got a response back. I'm working on a SAML with SP2, 4.3 SP2, and I just got a response back from SAP saying that SP2 isn't working, but they have a patch 2 out for SAML. There's just a variety of settings that they're having to keep up with, but they are providing, SAP is providing direct support for that. So so if you've got some SAML, if you want to do SAML with your IDP, this is an authentication method that is more general used, as opposed to some of the single sign-on options elsewhere, and the IDPs handle the MFA. So so that's why a lot of people are wanting to use SAML now. So yeah, SAP is very much helpful on that. They're trying to be very helpful, but I think they're still working out a few kinks, given that they just had a patch released for that. So yep.
Okay, and then finally, considerations for AWS or Azure or Google Cloud Platform. Have you seen any noticeable differences between, which hyperscaler people host on?
I haven't seen differences between Azure and AWS. I don't think I've had enough experience of, I mean, I'm come from a science background, so I definitely believe in you need to have numbers to really support that, but real differences. But just in general, when people are going to the cloud, there's certain offerings, so they may not be able to get the exact memory that they wanted, and so they need to go up to whatever it is that's offered, like 48 gigs RAM. They have issues possibly with licensing. If they're CPU licensed, they're going to have issues with that. They're going to have to go to the newer license. Newer, in quotes, because it's been around for a while, of named and other users. But then mainly the biggest thing is you're working with people that are the cloud support. So you're either working with just a general in-house cloud support, or even they are working with their AWS and Azure support. So plan on a little bit extra time, plan on that, that communication security additions to your migration, because there's going to be those additional steps and those additional requirements, and the additional people that you need on, communicating. So that's the major experience. Obviously, the ports have to be, defined. There is settings in the PAM guide for the various different flavors of cloud offerings. So you can go to different knowledge base articles that SAP provides specific to Azure or specific to AWS. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. Renali, one for you. Is anyone using CMS and audit databases? I'm interested in finding a BusinessObjects formula to convert a prompt value of a date, which comes into the report as Epoch time, and into the date time, it represents 4/22/20 2022, followed by the time GMT. Specifically, would be happy with just the date as opposed to the extra bits on the end there. What do you think, Renali?
Yeah, so the first part of the question, yes, people are definitely using the CMS and the audit databases. I mean, they're definitely being used in the background all the time, but now with the universes that SAP have released, a lot of admins are using the universes to run reports, to do health check for the systems and assess and evaluate a lot of things with the system. So they definitely are using them. The second part with the Epoch, yeah, the Epoch time is for everyone. It's the time, the date is expressed as number of seconds elapsed from the date January 1, 1970. So to convert that, yeah, I'm going to drop the formula in the chat for everyone. So, for example, there is a Webby function called relative date. And what you input to that is the starting date and then the number of periods. So the period is second because the time is expressed in number of seconds. So the second period and then the actual number. So I put that in the chat window, and I can actually share. I can share my screen if that helps more.
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
Let's see. Okay.
We're not seeing it yet.
You can see it. Okay.
No, not yet.
The starting date, which is the Epoch start date.
No, we're not seeing it, Renali. We're not seeing it.
Oh.
We're just seeing you.
There was one more button.
That's it. Okay. Yeah, now we see it.
So this is the formula in the most simplest form. I converted the January 1, 1970 date to a real date using the to-date Webby function. And then I use the relative date to calculate the actual date. So from that date, when these many seconds have elapsed, what is that date now? So that will give me the 4/22/22. And then you can format that using time and to show time, or you can add hours. There is another same relative date function, and you can use that with hour period to convert to GMT or any other time zone that you need to display that with.
That's awesome. Thank you, Renali. That's great. Thanks for showing that too. Roxanne, over to you. Please, can you explain the hash unavailable error in a BusinessObjects report, measure error, and the hash to refresh error in a BobJ report, both also a measure error as well?
Yes, most of these come about when using the pound unavailable comes most commonly with data that's coming from a query that is using a BEX query or a BIX query, and it's trying to do the aggregation at a farther back level and doesn't know quite how to handle it. So the solution is to be able to aggregate it at the sum level, which you can set that up in the universe that is using the data to add the sum aggregation around that. And then the pound unavailable is kind of a similar problem in Webby reports that are bringing in data and trying to do a refresh that is referencing data farther back. The solution for that, the to refresh, the easiest, of course, is just to hit the refresh button and it brings back the data. You could also change the aggregation on objects that are coming from non-universe, or let me back up. The Webby report user can change the aggregation if it's coming from non-universe data by changing it in 4.2 in the query panel for Excel. And then in 4.3, there's a new properties panel where you can change the aggregation. Instead of delegated, you can change it to a sum aggregation in 4.3. So ways around it, but that's the reason why those. And SAP likes to specify the to refresh is not an error, it's a reminder. So
I see.
yeah.
Excellent point. Okay. How do we use set up Webby 4.3 on a mobile device? Is there an app? Is there an app available for both Android and Apple? Anyone want to take this one?
Yeah, there is, and some of it's deployed by default. Used to be that you had to deploy them separately, but now they're deployed by default. Yeah, so especially with Fiori now, you've got, you know, the HTML5 presentation, and it's touchscreen compatible and all that. So so 4.3 is really, 4.3 is really evolved into being, you know, part of it. But certainly there is a mobile app, SAP's mobile app that you know does have a piece associated with that. And the nice thing about the SAP mobile app is that there's some additional privacy and controls as far as setting up which documents are going to be available over mobile, which documents you can download, which groups can download data, and that kind of thing. So there's some additional settings when it comes to mobile app settings.
So I have to ask you, have you tried that out at 4.3, the mobile app?
I haven't tried it with 4.3. No, like I said, since it's touch compatible, we just open it up in Safari or or whatever. So yeah.
Yep, this is opened up in Safari. This is accessing one of our VMs that we use for teaching, so it's a public URL. Otherwise, you would need the VPN. Would be another way to access your 4.3 data as well from a browser.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. A couple coming in through the Q&A session. Do you know what would cause a dynamic recipient report to be stripped out of a publication properties?
So the biggest thing with publications is that is if you've got some of the filter functionality. So if you've got a filter bar and you've got up at the top, if you've got a drop down filter bar, that messes up publications. Never have a filter bar with publications. So that's the biggest one. Why you would drop out a dynamic, there is the new, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to answer this right spot on. I'd have to look, but there are settings now, for instance, where you can specify that it gets sent only when there's data versus when they're, but you can also have it sent all the time. And the default is only when it's data, I believe. So, so it could be that somebody doesn't get data because it doesn't get a report because there's no data for that person. But I'm not sure I'm going to be answering that correctly as far as, you would have to look into that further.
Okay. Do you have any tips or solutions to known issues in connecting business objects to Snowflake? We see special characters in the varchar fields.
Special tips for Snowflake. Yeah, we did a client way back when. Can we even say who that is, Paul? Where we had to do, I'm not sure if we can, so I'm going to let you do that. But where we had to do a formulas replacement for a bunch of things, and that was a while back. So I'm not sure about the varchar, the tcar issue that you're having, but we did have that with this particular client, and we did go through a code-based solution for that. Other tips for Snowflake. Recently I'm working on a Snowflake that we've got a key pair that set up so that for the connection, and it's a JDBC connection. And the key pair had to be private on the server versus if it's on local, it didn't have to be at the private key. So that was an interesting additional piece, but that's on a cloud server. So I actually think that's more because it's cloud related. Private keys generally are, there's additional key requirements in general when it comes to cloud servers. So I think that was specific to that. Does anybody else have any?
Well, I think, during the earlier versions of both BusinessObjects and Snowflake, going back about 2-3 years ago, there were definitely some varchar issues, which I believe in the more recent versions have been addressed. And of course, BusinessObjects has a direct connector to Snowflake now as well. So we are seeing quite a few BusinessObjects customers using Snowflake in the cloud as their repository of choice now. For their data lake, data warehouse, etc. So it has become quite commonplace. So if you are having any specific issues, please let us know, and we'll direct you accordingly. One for you, Roxanne. A recent SpeakBO webinar discussed folding in 4.3. The presenter mentioned that now folding works the same for the user as it does for the developer. We have a series of reports where the use case is that the end user wants to see the subtotals and totals, but does not want to see the detail in the folds. But the detail must be there in order for the totals to work correctly. We fold the report in development and then hide the folding capability from the end user. Can this still be done in 4.3?
If the report is set up, if you set the report up in 4.3, set it up for folding, and then uncheck that, then yes, it will show the totals and subtotals, whatever level you have saved it as for your end users. Yes.
Okay, excellent. I'm getting a couple of questions about the mobile app. So if one of you, Renali and Amy, could quickly go into the App Store and track it down, that would be good, so they can see it. I mean, there's one obviously in the Apple Store, and there's one in the Google Android Store as well. So they're different for the different devices, and I imagine the Apple Store has. I mean, just like Roxanne showed her iPad there really isn't a big difference between desktop and iPad, because it's all HTML5 and it's going to work the same, and you don't need an app for that. You can just do it very nicely through the browser. But if you do want to use the app, we'll point you in that direction. Are there any plans for BusinessObjects 4.3 to connect to Databricks? I think I heard something about that potentially in Service Pack 3, which will come out in December of this year. I would stay tuned. If you're attending IBIS in June or the Let's Speak BO experience, it will definitely be addressed there. But we will look at that. I also saw in the chat session that somebody was asking if there'd be any further training sessions on BO 4.3. Absolutely. We've got the differences course that Roxanne referred to running every single month this year. It's a very popular course. The May course is filling up quickly. And then for June, July, we'll be running it as part of the SpeakBO experience, and then we'll run it again in August, September, October, November, December. In addition to that, we will be holding a lot of SpeakBO sessions around 4.3, and as more and more people move to it this year, there will be more and more user group sessions discussing it as well. Okay. What is the future of BusinessObjects? As a BusinessObjects power users, can we start focusing on SAC already? Interesting question. You know, business objects and SAC are miles apart. They really, you know, are not the same tool at all. So I don't really see that it makes an awful lot of sense to move from business objects to SAC. When 85% of business objects customers today are using either Tableau or Power BI or both, it's highly unlikely that many will take the SAC direction anyway. Business Objects has a great future. It will be around definitely the rest of this decade. 4.3, you know, has multiple service packs planned over the next 4 or 5 years. Business Objects Private Cloud Edition is also out there as well for a cloud-hosted solution to Business Objects. So I would say, you know, it's got a great future ahead of it.
SAP is definitely recommending a hybrid approach when it comes to SAC. I mean, they're saying, you know, they're recommending getting a few accounts on SAC for doing some of that analytical piece, but they are separate. They're fairly separate.
Yeah, like I said, the problem is more about there's not too many people using it, and it's not really the preferred choice of the majority of Business Objects customers. So, you know, SAC has incredibly limited reporting capabilities, for example. So it's not going to be your first choice for that. SAC can't run on premise. There's a lot of things there that, you know, are definitely considerations, without a doubt. Okay, Renali kindly dropped in the chat there that the SAP Business Objects Mobile is the name of the app that you will find in either the Apple Store or the Android store as well. Okay, good. Well, I think we've run over a little bit. I think there might have been 1 or 2 more questions we didn't quite get to. No, I think we've covered. There was one there, Amy, that said that I'd be interested to know more for the PostgreSQL support for CMS and reporting schemas.
Yeah, as a CMS option, I haven't seen anybody use it for a CMS option. It's open source. It's, you know, I just haven't seen anybody use it. It might be something for a smaller environment. But you know, like a lot of the connections, when you set up the drivers, you have to point the SBO files that are available, you know, to the driver jar location. So you know, there's some setup involved in the drivers, but they've had Postgres support since 4.1, and yeah, that's all I can say about it. It's supported. I have seen a lot of you know, I get the hits of the various knowledge base articles that come out daily. So I have seen a fair amount of knowledge base articles that, you know, issues that people are having with the data from Postgre, but you know, just I think it depends on what kind of data you're using. So
okay. And one final thing that came in on the Q&A, the properties are losing the entire setup for the dynamic report. From Kathy Myers, any idea what that one's related to?
Properties are losing the setup.
The entire setup for the dynamic report. I think that they're talking 4.3. Anyway, Kathy, if you want to expand on that.
Maybe that's the CSS, you know, Cascade style sheets. There's a CSS specific to document as well as a CSS specific to your environment. maybe it's related to that. I'm not quite sure
Okay.
what the question is.
All right. Well, I want to thank all our panelists. Renali, Roxanne, Amy, fantastic. You managed to get through over 25 questions there in 37 minutes. So that's pretty good. So thank you so much. And we will definitely do this again. I think it's great to see all these questions coming in both live and ahead of time. And obviously there's a tremendous amount of interest in getting these kinds of answers. It also gives us ideas as to what to plan for future SpeakPO sessions as well. So thank you for that. So with
And
that
happy
said,
Earth Day.
yes, happy Earth Day for last Friday. And with that said, let me hand back to Lucy.